Hi guys, we're back with our book today.
We are. And I haven't really looked inside this little beautiful thing to see how long it is, so we'll see if we get through the whole thing because we're tired. But it is called Starry Messenger. It is by Peter Sis. Galileo. You're right, I didn't see those. Galileo. Galilee. Starry Messenger, a book depicting the life of a famous scientist, mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, and physicist, Galileo Galilei. For hundreds of years, most people thought the Earth was the center of the universe, and the sun and the moon and all other planets revolved around it. They did not doubt or wonder if this was true. They just followed tradition. Then one man looked at the sky and wondered, what if things are not as everybody believes them to be? Maybe the Earth and the other planets move around the sun. He wrote down his observations, but he did not talk about them, and he did not publish them for a long, long time. He knew he could not prove they were true. It would take someone else to do that. The cornucopia system. The Earth moves. In those days, Italy was a country where many great artists, writers, musicians, and scholars lived. It still is, but... Oh, look at all those babies. What does this say? Italy was a quilt of city-states, each with its own laws and government, a common religion. The Catholic faith was one thing that they all shared, and the church was a powerful influence. Okay. Thank you for writing that in such a fun way. Galileo's Italy. All right, back to these babies. Galileo Galilei was born February 15th, 1564. Father Vincenzo Galilei, cloth merchant, accomplished musician, and mathematician. William Shakespeare was also born in 1564. Michelangelo died in that same year. In the city of Pisa, a little boy was born with stars in his eyes. His parents named him Galileo. Yeah, so if you see on all these babies, this is such a cool book. They're all wearing blankets that illustrate what their career will likely or possibly be. But Galileo's blah, blah, blanket is covered in stars. They didn't have astronauts in the 15th century, sweetheart.
Be a star.
Did I say that right? 1564. He was born the same year as William Shakespeare. That's so cool. Until the age of 11, Galileo was taught at home by his father. Then he was sent to the Benedictine monastery of Santa Marcia de Vallombrosa, where he studied Latin, Greek, religion, and music. Galileo thrived and he grew. In many ways, he was like any other healthy child, but he was more curious than most, and stars were always on his mind. In Galileo's time, homes and cities were often beautiful, but lives were very difficult and luxuries few. Light came from candles or oil lamps, and there was no refrigeration. The streets were open sewers. Disease was common, and thousands died from typhoid and from the bubonic plague. Well, that's sad. 1581, entered the University of Pisa, was an argumentative student and questioned the teachings of Aristotle. left the university to study mathematics and physics on his own, became professor of mathematics at the University of Pisa when he was just 25 years old. 1592, becomes professor of mathematics at the University of Padua. Did experiments proving Aristotle wrong. Discovered the law of falling objects by showing that two balls of unequal weight fall at the same speed. Invented and perfected instruments that brought new accuracy to science. A hydrostatic balance, the first practical thermometer, a geometric and military compass, or a compound microscope, and the first astronomical telescope. This dude was cool. He did so many things. He studied mathematics and physics and turned out to be a very bright young man who entertained and amused people with his brilliant experiments and observations. Galileo is our star, the people would say. The laws of the pendulum in 1583, the laws of falling objects in 1604, the laws of floating objects in 1611. That's the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And that's him. The star, the people would say. Then one day, Galileo heard about a new instrument for seeing things far, far away, and he figured out how it worked and made one for himself.
It's not an instrument.
Instrument doesn't only mean play music, believe it or not. A telescope is an instrument, but it doesn't play music. Then he turned it to the sky. The report, okay, this cursive is little and hard to read. A report reaching my ears that certain Fleming had constructed a spyglass. Upon hearing the news, I set myself to thinking about the problem. Finally, sparing neither labor nor expense, I succeeded in constructing for myself so excellent an instrument that objects seen by means of it appeared nearly 1,000 times larger and over 30 times closer than when regarded with our natural vision. The word telescope was coined 2 years later in 1611. This guy was so cool. The Starry Messenger, revealing great, unusual, and remarkable spectacles opening to the consideration of every man, and especially of philosophers and astronomers, as observed by Galileo Galilei, gentleman of Florence, professor of mathematics in the University of Padua, with the aid of a spyglass lately invented by him, and the surface of the moon, and innumerable fixed stars, and nebular, and I can't read that, above all, and 4 planets, swiftly revolving about Jupiter at different distances and periods, and known to no one before the author recently perceived them and decided that they should be named the Medicean stars. Venice, 1610. Night after night he gazed through his telescope, and he wrote down everything he observed, and then he published his observations in a book which was called The Starry Messenger. Check that out. He probably wrote these messages in Italian, though, and these are all in English. The moon is not robbed and a smooth and polished surface, but it is in fact rough and uneven. It is a beautiful thing and most gratifying to the sight to behold the body of the moon. I have observed natural and material of the Milky Way with the aid of telescopes. This scrutinized so directly and with regular certainly that all, I can't read this, which have philosophers for so many ages have been resolved to see it at last freed from wordy debates about the galaxy, is in fact nothing of innumerable stars grouped together in clusters. There are astronomical arguments derived from many things in my new celestial discoveries that plainly confute the Platonic system while admirably agreeing with and confirming the contrary hypothesis, covered everywhere just like the Earth's surfaces with huge prominences, deep valleys, and chasms. Okay, so I think we were supposed to read this. Anyway, the thoughts in this man's mind. Okay, Galileo was amazed by what he could see with his telescope. I have no doubt whatsoever that they are real objects and not mere appearances or illusions of the eye or of the lens of the telescope. I liken the sunspots to clouds of smoke. I shall now describe the method of drawing the spots with complete accuracy. Direct the telescope upon the sun, expose a flat white sheet of paper about a foot from the concave lens, and with, I can't read that, mark with spots in their right sizes, shapes, and positions. That little man. People read Galileo's book and they became inspired. He made maps of the heavens and dedicated the 4 newly discovered stars of Jupiter to his patron and ruler, the Grand Duke of Tuscany, Cosimo II. That was the name of his ruler. He was the Grand Duke of Tuscany, and his name was Cosimo II. That means he had a dad named Cosimo. Galileo presents the Medicean stars to Cosimo de Medici, the Starry Messengers, something, 1610, Jupiter and its moons, the Medicean stars. Really cool. Soon Galileo was famous. More and more people celebrated the stars, and they celebrated Galileo and his discoveries with statues and parades and spectacular events. Galileo's book was presented at the Frankfurt Book Fair and was later translated into many languages, including Chinese. Galileo enters the cosmic dispute, elected to the Academy of the Lynx-Eyed 1611. Hercules carrying the sky, the Medicean star revolving about Jupiter. His fame grew and the celebrations became extravaganzas, but now the church began to worry. Galileo had become too popular. By upholding the idea that the earth was not the center of the universe, he had gone against the Bible and everything the ancient philosophers had taught. He had gone against the church, and Galileo was ordered to stop believing what he could see with his own 2 eyes. He was summoned to appear before the highest ruler of the land, the Pope. I hold that the sun to be situated motionless in the center of the revolution of the celestial orbs, while the earth rotates on its Aries and revolves around the sun. He saw it with his own eyes, and the church told him to stop saying that because that wasn't true, but he saw it. Galileo was afraid. He knew that people had suffered terrible torture and punishment for not following tradition. It could happen to him. I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended to forego their use. He would not require us to deny sense and reason in physical matters which are set before our eyes and minds by direct experience or necessary demonstrations. He's saying the God he has learned about would not punish him for using his mind like this. Now he's in trouble. He's in prison. He was tried in the Pope's court, and everyone could see that the stars had left his eyes. the Inquisition found Galileo guilty of heresy, namely for having held and believed a doctrine which is false and contrary to the divine and holy scripture, that the sun is the center of the world and does not move from east to west, and the earth moves and is not the center of the world, and that one may hold and defend as probable an opinion after it has been declared and defined contrary to the Holy Scripture. June 1633, Rome. That's very sad. Galileo was condemned to spend the rest of his life locked in his house under guard. But he still had stars on his mind, and no one could keep him from thinking about the wonders of the sky and the mysteries of the universe. And when he went blind, no one could keep him from passing his ideas along to others until he died. And his ideas still live on. Finally, more than 300 years later, the leaders of the very church that had punished Galileo Galilei pardoned him, and they admitted that he was probably, in fact, surely, and absolutely right. In June 1633, Galileo was sentenced. And January 8, 1642, Galileo died. October 18, 1989, Galileo's spacecraft launched. And October 31st, 1992, Galileo was pardoned. They said he was not guilty of what they accused him of on Halloween in 1992. Peter Sis is an internationally acclaimed author, illustrator, and filmmaker. He was born in Brno, Czechoslovakia, and studied painting and filmmaking at the Academy of Applied Arts in Prague and at the Royal College of Art in London. His many magical books for children, particularly Following the Dream, A Small Tale from the Far North, and The Three Golden Keys, reflects his abiding interest in seekers and dreamers. He lives in New York City with his wife Terry and their two children, Madeline and Matej. Anyway, this was a really eye-opening book. No pun intended. Starry Messenger by Peter Sis. Everybody have a good night.
5 and 6.